Hey everyone, this is Roman Prokopchuk, and this is the Digital Savage Experience podcast. Today I have with me Simon Okelo. Simon is a father, media creator, DJ, musician, producer, logistician, and entrepreneur with roots in Kenya, who uses digital media and real life events to promote and celebrate a fresh narrative about the African and African American experience, both locally and globally. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me, my brother. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you for coming on. So tell me a little bit about your journey. How did you get to where you are today?
I was born and raised in Kisumu. Kisumu is the third largest city in Kenya, and it's right by Lake Victoria. And it's actually the largest city on Lake Victoria. And Lake Victoria is the second largest freshwater lake in the world. So if you look at Lake Victoria, it goes through three countries. It's in Tanzania, it's in Uganda, and it's also in Kenya. Growing up there was quite different from Seattle, Washington, where I am, joining you for our conversation right now. I grew up in a neighborhood that was extremely, violent, but I also learned a lot from that violent neighborhood that I grew up in. There was minimal resources there compared to here in Seattle or many other parts of the world. So it was always, a life of survival for the fittest. And then in 1997, my mother started an orphanage home where we were living with about 60 children in our compound, every day. So I learned how to be a leader, from a young age. But even way before that, when I was 8 years old, I used to sell milk and bread, distribute milk and bread in our neighborhood every morning before school. So, I was an entrepreneur from a young age. So I do a lot of things right now. I run One Vibe Africa, which is a non-profit organization. I started in 2008. I am a podcaster as well. I host the African Father in America podcast. I do social media strategy as my full-time job, actually, for Antioch University. And I also host their podcast, which is called the Seedfield Podcast. I co-host their podcast. And, I've been producing events for a long time, and I do my events to raise money to run an education, music, and art program in Kenya as part of the work of One Vibe Africa. I create a lot of content. I have produced documentaries, and a lot of this really is in response to my upbringing. It's in response to the things that happened to me growing up, and the fact that I'm here means that I have work to do, and I also have the work of inspiring other people to share their story so that people know that not all Africans are, dying, in the oceans on their way to Europe. Not all Africans are dying of starvation. That Africa is also a place where amazing people can come from. So that's the message that permeates everything that I do. Everything that I do is to change the story of Africa in general, that Africa is really the cradle of mankind. And Africans have been offering a lot to the world. If you look at the Black American community, culturally, they've been leading a lot of trends in the history of the US. Even Clubhouse, where we met, the community that is allowing it to thrive is the Black community. So this community also, what the media shows us is the same thing that the media shows us about Africans. The media shows us that we need to donate food to starving Africans, but they don't show us inventions that are being done by Africans. But also, really, if you also come to the most recent times, I've been really focusing on fatherhood, because I'm a father of 3 girls, and it's not easy to be a Black father in America. And I have a friend of mine who committed suicide last year in February, And he was a creative like us. He was a filmmaker, an amazing father, a veteran from the US Navy. And one day we just learned that, oh, he was no more, and we learned what had happened, and it shocked me. And I began my podcast really to share my story, inspire other Black fathers to also share their story, so that we can use our stories as a way of healing our hearts and our wounds and our traumas, while also preserving our culture and our stories and really changing the narrative one story at a time. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think that's important to kind of get a accurate depiction of wherever you're from, and I think you coming to the U.S., I'm a first generation immigrant, so coming from situations that aren't as open in terms of opportunities and with the economy and different other things, coming and being born into communism and seeing how that works, and people disappearing and being punished for having ideas that went against kind of the government and the state and not being able to practice religion. So coming here, I think people coming from those situations have like uh, a chip on their shoulder and a extra kind of grit. So like they hustle, they do things. Even here when I was younger, I would kind of hustle in school, sell candy, do whatever to kind of just make money and see opportunity. So I think it's important to tell the story. And fatherhood is, impactful journey in itself in terms of raising and molding human beings. And we spoke that I'm a foster parent, so I have the dynamic where I live close to the capital of my state, New Jersey. So a lot of the kids are coming from the inner city. So I fostered 25 kids since June of 2018,
Oh,
19 of which are African American, 4 Hispanic, and 2 white. So I had that, different perspective of, teaching kids about their culture that isn't mine, and raising kids to really know about who they are as well. So I understand that dynamic as well.
yeah. It's not easy. It's not easy to be like not just a parent but a mentor to 25 kids. Congratulations, and keep up the good work.
Yeah, it's tough. And you mentioned also your friend that committed suicide. Mental health, especially during 2021, it's one of those things with isolation and things that may have been problems are now like kind of highlighted because people don't have that connectiveness or interaction with other people. I think it's really important for awareness. I don't think there's enough mental health awareness, especially in the US. Sometimes people have an issue. You see a lot of homeless people that it's not addressed around me. A lot of them have mental health issues. And I mean, it's sad to see that there aren't different programs and structures that can, possibly benefit them. And I think it's really prevalent mental health and suicide in kind of creatives in the startup community, because being an entrepreneur and having a startup, you put all that weight on yourself and it's a lonely journey. And sometimes you get overwhelmed. And unfortunately, some people don't have kind of like the right system or whatever in their life to kind of combat that, and they take their own lives or turn to substance abuse and things of that nature. So I think that's important to highlight as well.
Right, right. We have to take care of ourselves, and we have to know that once we are born here, we are not just here alone. We are here, and we represent many other people. When we are born in this world, we are born with love, and the moment we are born, we start loving people. We start with our family, our friends, and that it's a seed that we plant in other people, and they plant in us from the very beginning. I see that with my daughters. Every morning, even today when I woke up, I know that when I'm with them, the first few hours of the day, I can't be on Clubhouse at the same time. I have to remove my earbuds and really look at them in the eyes and know who they are and ask them how they slept, because once these years are gone, you can't repeat that moment again. So I'm being very intentional, but I didn't get that from my parents. I'm just learning now. I lost my mom in October last year. My father is still around. He's 82. And I don't have a great relationship with him. we are good, but it's not like we call each other every week. It's not like that. We are okay with it. I hope he's okay with it. From when we do things together, he seems okay with it. But I wish it was better. And I don't want my daughters to wish that it was better. I want them to know. And I think as an African or black man, and also a man in general, with other men and men in general, including myself and even my father, we tend to want to be so strong because we've been conditioned, we've been wired to not even show one another affection, to not appreciate one another when another man does something commendable, or they're dressed nicely, or they've done a good podcast interview. We just want to keep it until we don't have the chance anymore to actually help somebody else grow. Because the moment we learn how to show love and appreciation and vulnerability towards other people, we can learn how to do that with ourselves. But we can also learn how to do it with ourselves and then do it with other people. It just depends with who you are. I grew up really being a helper, but now I'm focusing on myself. That's why, even though I have the nonprofit, I'm focusing on my podcast where I can build my own brand. I have my own website. I'm putting out my own work. I'm working on a photo book right now as well, that tells the story of the work I've been doing for the last 15 years with my nonprofit. So what you're saying about mental health is important, and storytelling and producing content and writing and eating good food, exercising. If you listen to some of my episodes, you learn that I value having a good balance, because you only have one life to lead. If you spend a lot of time having to fix problems that you could avoid, then you're losing the opportunity to really enjoy this life, which is short.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. And you mentioned kind of stereotypically, usually in terms of culture, men aren't, traditionally looked at as sharing their feelings. Usually that's not, a strong character trait. It's kind of be, the tough person and, be the person to lean on. And it's also kind of cultural. So from Eastern Europe, I guess during kind of the Soviet Union, everybody's kind of stoic. So I don't even know like how many years it took for like my dad to say I love you, but it was rare and far in between, and it wasn't one of those, like you said. I mean, I personally haven't seen my dad in 13 years. There was, a history of domestic abuse towards my mom when I was younger and stuff like that. So I
Yeah.
made a kind of conscious decision that I wasn't going to have him part of my life if he didn't change the way he acted and come to terms with his behavior. I forgave him, and, hopefully he's doing good. Sometimes he texts me happy birthday and stuff like that, but that's the most contact I have with him. But, it's just what we've been pre-programmed by society, and society as a whole, and regions of the world that we came from. And I think it's important to kind of break that and, I guess, be the best versions of ourselves.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's not easy. You have to work on it every day, every day, every day, every day. You can't give up. Sometimes you can slack for a week or so, but you really have to have activities that you do for yourself. And this is to the listeners who are probably our age. I'm 37, so those who are probably in their 20s, who are listening to your amazing podcast, I just want you to put some self-love and self-practice. You don't have to be doing yoga and meditation, but you can just make sure you go for a short run every day if you can, or you go for a walk. You go somewhere in the jungle or in a park, enjoy nature. Enjoy nature, because we are being conditioned to just enjoy the screens. If you just enjoy the screens, the screens are not always just good for you. They're good for business, they're good for making money, they're good for entertainment, But then who are you leaving nature for? You do you just want the frogs and the monkeys to be the ones enjoying nature? And climate change is coming. We are going to be losing a lot of these places that we love, even though there is an effort to conserve the forests. Understanding the forests helps you understand yourself. You know, there is a level of humility that literally going for a hike challenges you in a way that if you conquer it, when you come back to your work, you want to conquer it too, you know? So, yeah, I just want to share that.
Yeah, I agree. So, what motivates you to succeed? Obviously, those motivations may have changed over time, but what currently motivates you to succeed?
What motivates me to succeed is that I am here for a higher purpose and I have not discovered that purpose yet. So I'm in search of why I was born, you know, and every time I put a bigger goal that I want to accomplish, I feel that it's an achievable goal because I do achieve it, you know. There are things that I don't aim for, or I know that they will come with time, you know. Uh, but I know that my purpose is bigger than myself, you know, and that's why I believe that my part of my purpose is to change the narrative about Africa because I'm a storyteller and I exemplify a new narrative for Africa, you know. So that purpose is so big, you know, it almost feels unachievable. But because of that, I know that I'll work on it and then mentor a generation of people to continue with that journey, you know. So because I know that I'm doing something that I will not be here to finish, I have to be very dedicated. I have to be very motivated. I have to be very driven. You know, that's what motivates me. And also because I receive feedback. You know, I receive feedback. For example, the room that I do every day, 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time on Clubhouse. Um, you know, we've been growing it over the last almost month and a half, and I put in work in it as if, you know, I'm Elon Musk. I'm building, you know, a car or a jet that is going to space, you know. But then I apply that in everything I do on my podcast, on my parenting. I just want excellence, you know, because I feel that people are watching and people are learning from every action I take, you know. And then I document things that I do because I know that I want to educate other people, you know. So really what motivates me is the depth and the vastness of my mission on this earth.
Yeah, and I think that's, a journey, and the beauty of kind of reaching a goal is the journey. And a lot of people think a goal or something in terms of giving back is too big that one person can't, do something about it, but kind of having a start, and it's getting out of your own head, because when you get to a level of discomfort or something new, like the human mind wants to keep safe and in a pattern, everything's going good. Why do you have to mess it up? Kind of, what do you have to do something new? There's uncertainty. But for
Mhm.
me personally, when I jumped into it, it's always the position of the most growth and the most impact in that kind of new state of chaos and uncertainty. So, I mean, even with becoming a foster parent, at first, I spoke to my wife, I don't know if I can do it. And then we had two children. We've had up to six children at once. So it's one of those things. If I look back and I asked myself 4 years ago, can you see yourself being a foster parent? I would say no. And then fostering 25 children in like 2.5 years, I would definitely say no and say you're crazy. So you don't know what your true potential is until you get thrown into it, and it becomes easier. You become used to it, you develop a pattern, you pivot. If it's, a business or a startup or a nonprofit, you learn the process, you learn how to maximize things and do things better. And I think it's just a journey of growth.
Yes, yes. And you know, and with everything you impact people's lives forever, you know. A lot of people when they meet you or when they do things with you, for example, the kids you're fostering, they probably don't know that your interaction with them is a chapter in the book of their lives that will be there forever, you know. And a lot of them because they were uprooted from their homes and they had to be supported by your home. Their mind and their heart is aching from where they came from, so they don't see where they are. A lot of the time they think of where will they go, and many of us are like that. Many of us, even if we are not foster kids, you uprooted yourself from Europe, right, and brought yourself to the US, and you're always pushing yourself. Where am I going to go next? Where am I going to go next? In fact, this conversation reminds me of an African proverb we were discussing in my clubhouse room today that goes like this. When the chewing is pleasant, why do you hurry to swallow? This is a proverb from Malawi in Southern Africa. When the chewing is pleasant, why hurry to swallow? And of course, I want to commend you for what you're doing with those kids. But I was just also, bringing to attention the fact that kids like that, I can relate to them because I grew up with like 60 kids per day, or the orphans in my mother's orphanage. And we are still connected with a lot of them now, And I just wanted to say that forever, those kids that you're helping, you will forever be connected with them. You'll be going to their weddings. It's just going to be, it's so important that as we interact with one another, we know that, wow, I just put a stamp in this person's life. And how does that stamp look like? How will it look like tomorrow? It's important that we think about that.
Yep, it's how we interact and engage with others, and that engagement, you never know how you impact someone. Especially, I feel like that's what podcasts are great for. That
Yeah.
you never know who's listening, you never know who you can touch or help through something. So I
Yeah.
think it's the power of that, and really being mindful of interactions, because sometimes we don't necessarily have the best interactions with people, and just thinking about, really being mindful about like how you can add value and serve others in terms of how you interact with them as well.
Right. Right.
So, what's one thing you may have seen as a weakness in yourself in the past that you've turned around and utilized as a strength today?
My weakness is not doing a good job asking when I should be asking for money, when I should be asking to be paid, when I should be asking for help, when I should be asking for a partnership or a sponsorship. Um, the way I've turned it around is that I am learning. I can't say that I've fully turned it around. I am learning my value. So I'm learning how much I should ask for, and I'm preparing my story and packaging myself in ways that when I ask for what I want, if you say no, then I'll just say thank you, no problem. I'll go to the next person. So I want to have that confidence, and I feel like I've had pressure to ask, but I feel that not asking and understanding my value and building the credibility so that I know who I am fully or as much as possible is going to allow me to ask for what I want, because I don't even know exactly what I want, and I want to know in a way that if I present it to you and you don't get it, no problem. I'll move on to the next person.
Yeah, I think it's important to not be afraid of no, because that, you never know if you're not going to ask. So I think it's important. When I worked at a lot of places at first, when I started, out of college, working in digital marketing, I was kind of okay. I got a raise. That's cool. And I was happy. But it's one of those things like, let's say you start a new job, just because they give you an offer doesn't mean you should ask for something more. Worst they can say is no. And I think that's kind of the beauty and the part of negotiation. So somebody starts and you meet in the middle. So sometimes I've been offered, a contract that was what I wanted or something of that nature in the past, but then I asked for more, and they said yes. So it's one of those things, if you don't say anything, like I think if you get an offer or if you have a client and they have a desired kind of, amount to pay you, like you said, you also have to understand your worth.
Right.
So, and not being afraid. So when I started asking other people, I started asking for different interviews. I started meeting people in person and, just trying to kind of pick their brain in a moment of their time. You'd be surprised of how many yeses you can get if you only asked. And if you don't ask, you're never going to know where that opportunity or whatever you asked for can lead you in life.
Right. Right.
So, what's one piece of advice you could leave with the audience, personal or professional?
Something that I can leave with the audience that is both personal and professional is that the most powerful gift that you have for the world is your story. So you should share your story with the world every day. Don't journal it, put it out on social media, tell your kids orally about it if you can't put it out on social media, because the world needs your story, not just your kids, not just your family. You never know who is going to read the post. Many people shy away from social media thinking that it's the devil, but I just want to encourage you to tell your story. Use social media as your journal, and one day publish a book, and you'll have an audience that is already reading that book that will actually buy the actual book when you have it ready. And with that, I just want to thank you again, my brother Roman, for this opportunity. We are building a great community together. We are going to do great things together. And I'm just grateful to be here.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on, and you kind of made a good point about that, because I see a lot of value in that as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I appreciate you coming on today. Can you let the audience know how they can find you?
Yes, if you want to connect with me, the best way is Twitter. My Twitter is at OKELOJAVAN. That's at Okelo Javan. I prefer Twitter, but you can also find me on Instagram. My Instagram is my full name at Simon Javan Okelo, and I also have a website, simonjavanokelo.com. Thank you.
Yeah, and I lost my train of thought. I completely remember what I wanted to say. It's important to share your story. So for
Yeah.
me personally, I started sharing on TikTok. I got on at first. I was like, it's just kids dancing and lip syncing. And then
Yeah.
I started sharing almost all the content other than my podcast is my experience as a foster dad.
Mm,
So, and you never know how big a post can get. So I had a post that it took me a minute to record, probably like 30 seconds to edit, a minute and a half of my time. It ended up reaching like 130,000 people, and I had like 7,000 likes. I mean, obviously people reach other success on TikTok, millions, but for me personally, that went kind of mini viral. And from that, there was several news organizations that saw that and actually reached out to me directly
mm,
about, what I'm experiencing as a foster parent during COVID, or my experience through, going through miscarriages and then foster dad, and really being open about it. So you don't know what you share and who, like you said, like we talked about, who it impacts or what opportunities that it arises. And some of
right.
these things may take you a minute or two and you can reach the world. I
Right.
think the view time, a minute video, it's been viewed for like 1,200 hours or something crazy, just 1 minute, that
Right.
takes hardly any time and has been impactful to so many people. So utilizing the power of social media, yes, you can. Social media is a time suck sometimes. Some platforms are very artificial. Some accounts are just, a highlight reel of somebody's life. But when you're genuine about it, you're adding value to people, it can really benefit and change the world.
Right. Right.
And I really appreciate you coming on today and adding value to the show. And thanks again for stopping by.
Of course, my brother. I'm grateful, and I'll come back again. I'm super grateful for the opportunity.
Thank you. My pleasure. Take care.
Okay, my brother.